What if the only reason you can't, build a towering skyscraper out of thin air or just fundamentally alter the entire fabric of your own life is simply because your brain lacks the blueprint to do it?
Right.
I mean, what if the absolute limits of your reality are literally just the limits of your imagination? Welcome to the deep dive. If you're joining us today, you are the kind of person who wants to bypass the endless scroll of information overload and get straight to the profound paradigm shifting insights.
Absolutely. We are getting right to the core today.
Yeah, and today we're unpacking a text that promises exactly that. We are looking at a deeply philosophical, highly provocative piece of writing titled Chapter of Celestial Cultivation, Article 11, Stepping Out of Reality and Beginning Transformation. And it's by an author named Shifeng.
It's a text that, well, it doesn't really ask for your gentle consideration. It demands that you completely dismantle your understanding of the world.
Right.
Because the core premise we're exploring today is this idea that everything you perceive with your five senses is an illusion.
An illusion.
Right. Yeah, and that your entire existence is governed by the invisible, entirely self-imposed boundaries of your consciousness.
And we aren't just going to float around in abstract mystical clouds today, right? The author anchors these massive metaphysical concepts to incredibly tangible things.
Oh, very tangible.
We're going to look at teacups, nuclear power plants, the psychology of billionaires, and how all of it ties into this really intricate cosmic framework.
Yeah, to understand how the author claims we can achieve this, ultimate transformation, we first have to start at his baseline argument about what the physical world actually is.
Okay, let's unpack this. What is his baseline?
Well, he argues that the myriad phenomena of the universe, like everything we see, hear, or touch, are just elusive illusions. They shift constantly, precisely because our consciousness shifts.
I mean, he points out our fundamental powerlessness against the forces of nature as proof of this illusion, right? Like, we can't physically grab a cloud out of the sky.
Exactly. Or control the rotation of the Earth.
Right. And the author extends this feeling of powerlessness to human society. We feel overwhelmed by complex social structures because, according to the text, all of these things are merely reflections of divine spirits and human consciousness. We're basically swimming in a projection.
We really are. And this is where he begins to bridge the metaphysical with the material. He posits that everything in the human world is a direct product of consciousness. The towering cities we live in, the computers we type on, the reservoirs we build.
None of it exists without the initial human consciousness required to conceptualize it.
Precisely. The thought has to precede the physical manifestation.
He uses this very vivid analogy about monkeys and apes that I loved. He says, look, monkeys cannot build a city or manufacture a cell phone. Is it just because they lack opposing thumbs or, I don't know, vocal cords?
Right, like purely physical limitations.
Yeah, but no, the text argues it is simply because they lack the specific consciousness. The blueprint for a city does not exist in a monkey's mind. Therefore, the city can never exist in a monkey's reality.
Which is a logic he extends directly into the most intimate parts of our lives.
Yeah.
He categorizes our deepest human relationships, parents, children, friends, spouses, as manifestations of our consciousness.
Wait, relationships too?
Yeah, all of it. We get married because the desire, the mental architecture for marriage exists in our minds first. We have children because we desire to reproduce. If that desire was entirely absent, those relationships would simply never materialize in our lived experience.
Okay, I have to jump in here and push back on this a bit because I'm putting myself in your shoes listening to this right now.
Yep.
It's one thing to say a human relationship is born of a conscious choice. I mean, that makes intuitive sense.
Sure.
But the author also lists things like nuclear power plants, particle accelerators, and space stations. That sounds a lot like pure solipsism.
It does sound like that at first glance, yeah.
Right. Because if I walk into a highly dangerous, scientifically complex particle accelerator, the radiation is going to tell me whether I understand nuclear fission or not. Are we really saying a particle accelerator is just an illusion?
What's fascinating here is that the author isn't claiming that physical laws don't operate. He's not saying you can magically walk through a concrete wall. The radiation is absolutely lethal.
Okay, so the danger is real.
The danger is a physical reality, yes. But consider the origin of the facility itself. A uranium atom is just a piece of the universe doing what it does.
Just sitting there in the dirt.
Exactly. It only becomes a quote-unquote fuel rod or a component of a power plant because a human consciousness categorized it, extracted it, and built a highly specific structure around it based on a mental model.
Oh, I see.
So our entire interaction with that matter, the context, is an illusion constructed by the mind. The materials remain inert until consciousness acts upon them.
So the reality of the power plant is a projection of our collective mental framework. We build the boundaries of our world with our thoughts.
We do, and that brings us to how this invisible force dictates not just concrete and steel, but human society itself.
Right. If consciousness can conjure a city, how does it shape our socioeconomic status? And he uses some incredibly specific and, frankly, politically charged historical examples here to make his point. And just as a quick aside to you listening, our goal today is impartially exploring his viewpoint. We aren't endorsing his take on history or picking political sides, but we really have to look at these examples to see how his theory actually operates in practice.
It's vital to examine them because they illustrate his mechanism of action. He starts with a micro example. He says a thief commits theft because the concept of stealing exists in their consciousness.
Makes sense.
Right, and a virtuous person
Yeah.
does not steal because that thought is entirely absent. The parameter of action is strictly defined by the parameter of thought.
Then he scales it up to a macro level, which is where it gets spicy. He says Mao Zedong became chairman because he had the consciousness for it. And billionaires accumulate massive wealth simply because they possess a specific wealth consciousness.
The author draws a really stark contrast regarding poverty as well. He argues that during the Mao era, widespread poverty existed across the country because the leaders largely came from impoverished backgrounds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, according to the text, they never possessed the consciousness of living in wealth, so they literally could not manifest a wealthy reality for the nation.
He compares that to the period after China's reform and opening up. The text points out that some people quickly became wealthy because they actively desired money and focused their minds on making it.
Yes, the focus shifted.
But the fascinating part is his observation about poverty alleviation officials. He notes that over a decade later, some officials who were actually in charge of fixing poverty remained completely destitute themselves.
Right, and why is that?
Because, according to him, they still lacked the mindset of wealth.
Now, to address the mechanics of this, because it is super easy to mistake this for a simplistic wish for a Ferrari and it appears in your driveway type of magic.
Yeah, like The Secret or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the author is describing an architecture of perception. If your mental framework is solely focused on scarcity, like those officials, you literally cannot perceive the avenues for wealth creation that a billionaire sees everywhere.
The consciousness dictates the realm of possible actions you can take.
It dictates what you even recognize as an opportunity.
He uses this brilliant, everyday analogy about rejude food in China to back this up. He talks about flour.
Oh, I love this one.
Right. He says people in northern China, specifically Shaanxi, Gansu, and Ningxia, they can take simple flour and make hundreds of different types of foods from it. But people from the northeast or the south of China cannot.
And it's not because they lack the flour or the hands or the fire.
Exactly. The physical reality of those hundreds of dishes is blocked by a mental boundary. The idea of the food does not exist in their minds, so the food cannot exist on their plates.
That's a perfect encapsulation of his point.
And then comes my absolute favorite analogy in the whole text, the teacup.
Yes, the teacup.
The author says a simple teacup has nearly 30 different uses, but we only use it as a vessel for drinking water. We look at a ceramic cylinder with a handle, and our brain immediately slaps a sticky note on it that says, drinking vessel.
A permanent sticky note.
Yeah, and because of that sticky note, we are completely blinded to the 29 other realities that cup could inhabit.
We freeze the cup in a single reality because our consciousness refuses to expand beyond its initial categorization.
It is a striking image, but I really have to pause here and ask the difficult question.
Go for it.
Is it overly simplistic to boil down complex systemic issues like poverty purely to a lack of wealth consciousness? I mean, we know there are systemic barriers, deeply entrenched economic structures that trap people in poverty, regardless of how much they might visualize wealth.
That is a profound philosophical friction. The tension between systemic reality and individual manifestation is massive. However, if we connect this to the bigger picture within the context of the text,
What is he really trying to do here?
the author is not attempting to write a nuanced economics treatise. He's using these worldly concepts, wealth, regional baking, teacups, to establish a universal, unshakable baseline rule for his readers. He's saying our limits are fundamentally self-imposed.
He has to convince you that your mind dictates your earthly reality because he is preparing you for a massive metaphysical leap.
Exactly. Now that the rule is established, the text applies this to its ultimate goal, which is leaving the human world entirely and stepping into celestial spaces.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because he names these spaces specifically, right? The 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and the Elysium world.
He does.
And for context, based on the philosophy, these aren't just physical planets with better weather. These represent escalating tiers of liberated consciousness. They are states of elongated, harmonious existence, free of earthly suffering.
But the central obstacle to getting there remains the human mind. The author poses a simple question. Why don't humans believe they can become celestials?
Because the vast majority simply do not believe it is possible.
Right. Circling back to our earlier analogy, the thought isn't in their consciousness.
Just like a monkey can't fathom paying taxes, right? So it doesn't pay taxes. A human can't fathom celestial existence, so they remain bound to the earth. If the thought doesn't exist, the reality can never be realized.
So how do we shatter that boundary?
Mm-hmm.
The author reveals what he calls the secret method, which boils down to intentionality. You must actively create the future in your mind first.
And he brings in a quote here, doesn't he?
He does. He quotes Taiji Celestial, stating, "The way one thinks determines the form of one's existence." And it's worth noting that in this philosophical framework, Taiji refers to the supreme ultimate, the indivisible source of the universe.
The way one thinks determines the form of one's existence. That is a heavy, commanding principle.
He really is.
He says if you constantly imagine yourself living in the 1,000-year world, over time, your actual life structure will evolve toward that existence.
But notice the absolute requirement of precision here. You cannot arrive in the Elysium world by blind luck or just, wishful thinking. The text is strict about the law of the Tao. The Tao is unyielding.
So no shortcuts.
No shortcuts. If the destination is not meticulously mapped in your mind, you cannot travel there.
It's like trying to navigate to a city that you vehemently refuse to believe is on the map. You are never going to turn down the right highway.
Exactly.
But the author says if you do hold this consciousness and you actively cultivate it, when the time is ripe, you will naturally transition. He even notes that to the people left behind on Earth, it might look like you have simply died. But in truth, you have transcended the illusion.
Which brings us to a fascinating paradox regarding how we actually learn to do this. Because the author states his explicit intention is to guide people to the celestial islands continent of the Elysium world.
Which sounds completely mysterious, almost impossibly profound.
Right, yet he insists the secrets of the universe are actually incredibly simple once revealed.
He claims a primary school student could understand them.
Yes, but if they remain unspoken, humanity would wander in the dark forever. He compares this spiritual revelation to major scientific breakthroughs. He asks, who could have guessed the concept that energy equals mass times the speed of light squared?
Or that the invisible force pulling an apple to the ground is gravity.
Right. He also lumps in the concept of the greatest creator, which the text views as the supreme spirit permeating all time and space, right alongside Einstein's EMC squared and Newton's gravity.
His point is that before these concepts were spoken, they were literally unimaginable to the human mind. But the second they are revealed, they become the painfully obvious foundation of reality.
Einstein didn't invent relativity. He uncovered it.
It is only obvious after you see past the illusion.
Exactly. Our consciousness is trapped by conventional thinking and the ever-changing surface phenomena of the physical world. We rarely look past the appearance of things to see the essence. The author argues that we need tools to break this framework. But here's where he introduces the most provocative claim in the entire deep dive.
Oh man, this part blew my mind. The author, who is actively writing a spiritual text to guide people to enlightenment, suddenly pivots and says that if someone truly understands the mysteries of life and the Tao, then his own writings are mere rubbish.
He extends that judgment across the board, too. The Bible, Buddhist scriptures, the Tao Te Ching. He states that to an enlightened mind, all of them are nothing but trash.
It is incredibly jarring to read a spiritual guide where the author calls the world's most revered sacred texts, including the very article you are currently reading, garbage. How do we dissect this provocation?
This raises an important question, right? It's a classic philosophical paradox regarding the nature of teaching. The texts are not the truth. They are just the vehicle to reach the truth.
So it's like learning to ride a bike with training wheels. The Bible, the Tao Te Ching, or this chapter by Suifeng, they are the training wheels.
That's a great way to put it.
Once you figure out how to balance, how to actually grasp the Tao and expand your consciousness, if you keep insisting on using the training wheels, they don't keep you safe anymore. They actually stop you from going fast. They become a hindrance.
That is the perfect way to look at it.
Hmm.
The author is saying that once you arrive at the destination, the words that got you there become obsolete. They are just the finger pointing at the moon.
Don't stare at the finger.
Right. The tragedy, as he notes, is that people fail to transcend because they end up worshiping the training wheels. They worship the vehicle instead of actually taking the journey. However, without this trash, we could never grasp the mysteries in the first place.
We get obsessed with the apparatus, which ties perfectly into how the author views the human condition as a whole. As we bring this massive cosmic framework back down to Earth, he paints a somewhat tragic but ultimately hopeful picture of us.
He really does.
He says we live in a world of illusions and we violently refuse to admit it.
We live in a world of self-created boundaries, and we cling to them with absolute devotion. We spend our entire lives obsessing over competing, fighting, and possessing material things.
And he says we do this right up until the moment of our death. We toil for an entire lifetime, accumulating money, status, and grudges, and then we die. At that moment, the entire material world vanishes for us.
We leave with absolutely nothing.
Nothing. But while we are here, we stubbornly deceive ourselves, finding the agonizing struggle of life to be both exciting and deeply sorrowful.
The author references the ancient philosopher Laozi here. The text claims Laozi understood this tragedy profoundly. Laozi saw that the teachings of the Tao were actually incredibly easy to understand and follow, but human beings were simply unwilling to let go of their earthly illusions.
So Laozi gave up on trying to convince a stubborn humanity and simply became a celestial himself.
He saw the futility of it and just opted out.
Which is wild, and that leads to this incredible quote from a sage that the author includes near the end of the text. He writes, "Whenever humans start thinking, the greatest creator laughs."
But the context of that laughter is everything. The author adds a crucial caveat. The creator is not laughing at all thought.
Right, the text says if your thoughts are entirely consumed by the illusions, if you are obsessing over how to get married, how to amass a fortune, how to climb the political ladder, or how to destroy your enemies, then yes, the creator laughs.
Even the sages find it amusing. It is like watching a toddler furiously try to organize the clouds in the sky. It's a pointless, self-serious game.
However, he argues, if we shift our contemplation, if we start using our consciousness to figure out how to extend our lives from the human world into the celestial realms, then the greatest creator does not mock us. The sages do not ridicule us.
Because in that specific moment, we have finally awakened from the dream. We've begun to understand something real.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this deep dive right now? We have journeyed from the mundane reality of teacups to the lethal danger of particle accelerators, all the way to the absolute liberation of the 1,000-year world. The text is challenging us to look at our daily stressors, our jobs, our bank accounts, our arguments, as self-created illusions.
And the immediate practical takeaway here isn't necessarily that you have to adopt a literal belief in the Elysian world today. The true value lies in recognizing how much agency you actually possess.
Yeah.
If this text is right, and your reality is strictly built by the boundaries of your consciousness, then you have the ultimate power to redesign that reality simply by changing what you choose to focus on. You are not a victim of your surroundings. You are the architect.
It is about moving from being a passive observer of a solid, immovable world to being the active creator of a fluid one.
Which brings me back to where we started today. The solid concrete of the city, the heavy wooden table. We look around and we see undeniable, fixed reality.
We think it's permanent. But if every towering skyscraper, every complex relationship, and every simple teacup around you today is simply the frozen manifestation of someone's past imagination, what completely unimaginable reality are you secretly building right now with your current daydreams?
It is a question that requires you to look very closely at your own mind.
It really is. The blueprint is entirely up to you. Keep expanding those boundaries. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.